to introduce you, but not the goddess of EFT and all the magical stuff that you work with, you know.
Would you like me to introduce myself? That'd be easier.
It might be easier. It might be easier. Um, but yeah, I'm just going to give a few little notes about yourself, and I will let you obviously introduce yourself because it's a lot easier, and you know a lot more about your subjects than anybody else I know, really, which is great. So, hey,
I said thank you. That's very kind.
it's true. It's true. So yeah, let's go for it, Savitri or Sav. Should I call you Sav?
I don't really mind. I don't mind. I had to say my name properly until I got to university anyway, right? Because although I've got an Indian background and my parents are Guyanese, but my dad left before I was born. I grew up in a white upper class area. So it was only when I got to Kingston University and someone said, "What's your name?" And I said, Savitri. And they were like, "Oh, Savitri." That was the first time that I don't properly say my name. I was like, yeah, that's it. That's the one. But my mum only ever used to call me by my full name when she was mad with me. Like it was just, it's just so. I've done a lot of healing, so it doesn't have any triggers anymore like that. But Sav is fine. Savvy is fine. Savitri, whatever you want to say. But I had to say it beats other things that I've been called.
yeah. I'm sure we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to welcome you into the new podcast. The reason why you're invited is pure because of the wonderful work that you do with your clients. And I myself went through some of your programs and went so much transformative. Obviously, we work on a mindset. We did some tapping, the EFT, and I've heard some wonderful testimonies that you've had from other people. But I'd like to know more about your perspective, in terms of why you do what you do and what actually it made you to become the person that you are today.
Oh, wow. Gosh. I've kind of always had an inner knowing. I think most people that are at the stage of the journey woke up very early. So I had my very first spiritual experience when I was about 3 years old. And I didn't I waxed on lyrical about it for years until I finally gave it up because you get a bit nuts, right? But I was awoken again in 2017. It was like the perfect storm of everything. So I had worked my way up at a young age, not really having a father. I was always well looked after, but compared to the people around me, we were the what do you call it, the strange ones in the village, right? And so we didn't have a lot of money compared to the people around us. As a girl, I was always told to stay at home. Like a little bit of racism and just a lot of things here and there. But so I had gotten to my corporate job, I passed my accountancy exams, I'd had a law degree, I had my 2 kids, and my Audi A6, which I really loved, right? And I had my 4-bedroom house, and but something had changed, and I was really just not enjoying life. Like really not enjoying life, and it was really building up a lot of resentment. I was being micromanaged at work to the point where I felt like I was going to knock my boss out.
Yeah.
And they offered me redundancy. So my son was flagged for chronic diarrhea and autism at the time. He had chronic diarrhea for about 6 months, I think. And my daughter was at a private school. She was going under a lot of pressure for grammar exams. Brexit had happened, Trump had happened. I was heading into depression. I had repetitive strain injury creeping up in my right hand because of the use of a mouse all the time. And after I was working out one lunchtime, and I stood in the gym because I was offered redundancy, but I was also offered the opportunity to stay under
Mhm.
another bed. And I heard a voice, and it just said, if you stay here, you're staying here out of fear.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened, but there was something in me that was just like, I just can't do this anymore. I can't, I hated it. Like I straight up just didn't understand life. And I was like, there's no value being added to anyone,
Yeah.
like it was a really heavy atmosphere. And so I left. And in my mind, I was like, just gonna go get another job. I'm really good at this, because I am like really good at interviews and getting another job. But my heart wasn't in it. My heart was totally not in it. And when I actually did get another job, I got fired in the space of a week. And I thought that I was just being hormonal or something. In the HR office of this, like, it was such a nice law firm. It's really plush in the city, has like 3 restaurants in it. It's got 2 gyms down the road, like, but the work it was just nothing, right? And anyway, but what I didn't realize is as I was crying throughout the whole friggin' day, like I couldn't control it.
Yeah.
Because it was a backed up biological, emotional response from me not feeling my feelings over the years. That is kind of how I got onto the journey. What were the 2 questions again?
Yeah. So you kind of had to go through the change itself in order to actually get yourself on track in the first place. And this is the problem that we have with most individuals, is the fact that there is so many options out there. And also we go through some form of pain through our own experiences and own beliefs. We don't always take the necessary actions for it, right? I myself included, as you already know, but for some of the listeners, my childhood wasn't that great either. We also had issues with food and clothing and looking after like my sisters. I essentially I started working when I was 8 years old, which was relatively young, and just to provide. And so we go through this cycle of adapting and accepting the reality as it is per se, but most of us don't really question why we're doing the things we're doing, right? And this is the problem, that eventually we keep bottling up, and eventually it just explodes in despair because we just keep all these emotions inside, and then we follow the same cycles in life, same patterns, same sort of behavior. And at times we always assume it's always the external world. It's your boss, it's everybody else, it's the government, it's all the other excuses why our own life is not working. But for what I've noticed, and even from our conversations, we know the outside world is a reflection of our internal world. So when we can regulate our own emotions, understand where they come from, and even look at through our experiences, if we can pick out those feelings, and like even one of our sessions we did some rewiring, right, where we went back into my past, and it changed me. It changed me.
Yeah, so
it changed me completely.
Yeah, so it's not really changing you. Like, it's just that I'm a very good investigator, and because I hold space, what it is you giving yourself the permission to change yourself, because it's your mind. No one can change your mind for you unless you let them, right? And so there's a couple of things, right? We don't know how we work. We've never been taught how we actually work, right? So that's the reason why it feels like such a flipping struggle, because you've never been taught. You are just taught with one aspect, one element of yourself. The second thing is that although we go through an initial amount of emotional pain, we are always choosing. So once we come to the awareness of how we work, we then get a choice as to whether we commit and recommit and keep growing with the journey, or whether we stay in cycles of fear, because that's basically what it is with mine.
Yeah.
And then, like, the other things with the processes and things that I use, when you say your internal world, like, it's very scientific, it's very biological, you know. And if you think of it like this, right, people talk about their emotions all the time, but they don't feel their feelings. In fact, the mind tries to keep you safe from feeling your feelings. So if you didn't go to the bathroom for a really long time, right, like, you would be in a lot of pain. Right? Your physical body would start to manifest disease and all sorts of things. And it's exactly the same with our emotional body. And what's so fascinating is that the subconscious, which is also referred to as the unconscious, the emotional, or the automatic mind, there's another name for it, or the heart and the soul, right? Runs 90 to 98% of everything we see in our reality.
Yeah.
So when we're trying to explain what the hell is going on with our logical, rational, decision-making minds, they only see 2 to 5% of what's going on, because they're not conscious yet of what is in the unconscious. And that is why the unconscious work is where everything is. It's where all your joy is. It's where, you know, your purpose is. It's where your love is, because so the irony is, the same place that holds your programming, your childlike innocence, but all of the negative and positive beliefs and habits about that we have, is also the same place that holds all your intuition, your inspired action, right? The unconditional love that flows through you. So I would just say, like, you take it a step back because you want to connect spirit to soul, right? You want to lead with spirit to your unconscious. But yeah, we don't know this. We've never been taught this. And so the other thing is that your emotional mind takes everything personally, because it comes from unconditional love, but it didn't receive unconditional love because we're born into conditions. So as it makes meaning out of our worlds, it's then trying to do everything to find its way back to unconditional love. It's really fascinating. And it's so funny because I remember when I spoke to you, because I'm really confident at what I do. So I was like, this is the time we need to, you know, tap on your wealth and, you know, like unleash your abundance. And you were like, we can do tap on my wallet. You know, like, and that thing, right? That's the skeptical, that's the logical, rational decision-making mind, which is very, very limited. It actually doesn't know, and it doesn't trust. So we basically have learnings from the age of 0 to 7 where we take everything in as truth. We only have 2 fears. So it's the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. We then have a critical filter that sits on top of that, which is formed at around the age of 8. So don't try and reason with children at the age of 8, because that's
not going to happen.
And then what happens is, because that filter's only job is to keep everything protected and the same, and of course the subconscious, the emotional mind, is where your innocence is, you can have patterns in there that are really unhealthy, which don't need to be there. So, you know, like, I know someone who was in a abusive relationship for 10 years. So, and he used to beat her and stuff like that. And it was only when he hit her on the back of the head with the other end of a hammer, she was knocked unconscious for 4 hours. And that's when her subconscious mind was like, oh shit, we might die. Like, oh, excuse me, right? It was like, oh my God, we might die. So that's when she left, right? Because and I read this in what's it called, $50 million offers. which is the book that Ron recommended to me.
Yeah.
And what he says is, if our problems were logical, we would have solved them all by now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But they're not.
Absolutely. No. Exactly. And this is some of the analogies I've used in the past with some of the clients. It's like we've discussed as well, if we were to trade shoes for 24 hours, logically we could solve each other's problems, but most of our problems are not actually logical. It's all the emotions and the garbage that we have with each other. So although we can logically say, okay, I can make this decision, but it's letting go and adapting to the change and dealing with the processes inside in order for us to move forward. That is the key. So in your case, what would you say to someone, because we are talking about the subconscious programming as well, is how would you say to someone, how can they access the subconscious? What can they do on a daily basis to elevate themselves in order for them to obviously see more opportunities and rewire their own conditioning? What would you say to them?
So I would say, there's so many different ways you can do things, but the first thing that I would say is ask really good questions to your mind. And start to open your heart, because your heart is 50,000 times more powerful than your brain, right? So the mind, when we talk about the mind, we're actually talking about all of it. We're talking about your heart, brain, gut. We're talking about your energy body. So that is to really start to ask good questions. And we're all at different stages of awareness. So when I started, it was really painful, but it launched me massively into my purpose, like really, really fast. And then I became really obsessed with it, because it just called me. It's like it's an addiction, right? But it's a really healthy addiction. It's a really healthy obsession. So most of us are addicted to pain, right? We're addicted to suffering. But that's our emotional mind is trying to keep us safe. It's actually also called secondary gain. So we receive some kind of sympathy, right? And through complaining, we receive some kind of like inclusion, because we're now alive, right? Because it's just looking for unconditional love. It's actually scared to let go. But when you ask really good questions like, what's my next step? Who do I need to speak with? And you can ask the questions, but you can also take really obvious actions. And some of the actions that you're going to take have to be new. There have to be things you've never done before. So the reason why our brain cells degenerate is because we don't use them.
That's right.
Sure, there's food and diet and all of those kind of things. Really, it's quite complex when you get into the emotional memories and the programming that exists. But one of the freshest ways to keep yourself fully alive and full of life is to do something new. So I did just last week for my birthday, I climbed up in the trampoline park with my son. They've got like this climbing area. I used to have a massive fear of heights, right? So I actually make sure that I'm with him and I do all the high things that he does, because I know it's really good for me. Or learning trampoline, or do my first pole dancing class, or even choreography and things like that, or fixing the Rubik's Cube, things I never thought I'd be able to do. I can actually fix the first 2 layers of Rubik's Cube. I have to learn the algorithm for the 3rd layer. I can fix the centers of a 5x5 Rubik's Cube as well, right? So I'm so proud of myself, right? That's the thing, right? That's a sense of awe and wonder of achievement, and we all have that. And the first thing is just don't take it personally. Ask really good questions, but know you are going to be challenged. And you will have to face your fears. It does take courage. Like if you want to step into love, you have to step through, around, over. I don't care how you do it, right? But you have to move through the fear. And that doesn't mean that you have to do it all at once, right? Because people get people get into this perfectionist mode, right, of black and white.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that.
Yeah.
It's all just staying aligned to your highest path. So ask really great questions, open your heart, do new things, and start to really listen to your intuition. Really listen to your intuition, take those actions. And the fifth thing that I would say is work with someone who can help you. Because none of us are islands, right? None of us are islands. Even if we want to think we are, we're not, right? We're actually literally born dependent on people. Like, we can't do anything for ourselves when we come in as babies. And you get very strong spirited babies that can survive 5 days without food and water and things like that, but we still need people to survive, if that makes sense. We still help each other. And so working with a coach or a mentor or someone like me will move you forward really, really fast, but in your most direct path.
Exactly. That's a wonderful analysis and great nugget you got there.
Thanks.
So I really hope that anyone who's watching this really are paying attention to every single word you're saying, because everything everything is making sense. It's like we've learned in neuroscience, by doing new things, it creates new neural pathways in our brain, which means the next time we do the same activity, it becomes a lot easier because the nerves and the tracks are already beginning to connect into a line. It's like, I remember as a child, we used to have this like drawings, right? And it used to be like dot by dot. And at the beginning, things didn't always make sense. But towards the end, you can actually see the full picture. But it takes action, and essentially it is taking step by step. But most of us, we want everything in one go. If we really want to make something out of your life, sometimes it takes time, a lot of hours, a lot of sacrifice in order to actually get those things. Sometimes.
Yeah, so it's the way that I see it, right, is it's not, right, when you're going for what you want, when you're going for the dreams, it's literally just understanding that you're leaving the familiar and you're making an energetic decision for life, for love, for life, for living. Like that's it, right? So we tend, because the way that we've been brought up with our subconscious, to take everything personally, right? But it's just a set of decisions. Yeah. You get better and better and better at making those decisions as you increase in your discernment and your intuition and your habits and your thinking, and as you open your heart and all of those kind of things. So it's like literally, it's like another school, right? So we've been taught that we need to go to school, right, on Earth, and of course that will evolve and change over time, but clearly they don't work really very well anymore. That's a whole nother session in itself, right? But once you understand that sacrifice is giving something up, you can take all the heaviness out of it, right? Because if you want a healthy body, you want to give up McDonald's, right? But actually your body doesn't really like McDonald's. It doesn't, right? So what you're doing is you're giving up that quick fix, that addiction. I'm not saying you can never eat it, right? But giving that up because you love yourself more. You love the energy that comes through. You love your health. You love the fact that you don't have to go to the doctor, right? You love the fact that you can run around with the kids. You love the fact that you've got more energy to do more things, right? You can do new things as well, right? So sacrifice has been made such a heavy word, and it's so interesting. Like the clearing I did last night, it was so funny, like since we're two women as well, right? But one of the things that women have especially is they are trained, they're indoctrinated to be martyrs. So they give, look after everybody else's needs, right? And then they don't allow themselves to receive or to look after themselves, because somewhere in the psyche, somewhere in the programming, it's saying that it's not good if you do that. And then at the same time, they've got all this resentment building inside of them because they really don't like that. Like it's a conservative one. And it actually creates negative karma. It really does. Because, and it leads to a lot of those assumptions, like, my partner doesn't care about me, or he doesn't appreciate me, but then they never speak up, right? They never tell the truth. And I'm speaking from experience, right? But in a way where they're able to hold loving boundaries as well and have honest and truthful communications, because everything becomes personal. And that's usually when people recycle the old arguments, or, instead of saying, and I love Marissa Peer, she explains the subconscious so well, and she's great at language, right? So if you know anything about biblical stuff, right? Words are your spirit. Like, I'd appreciate it if, rather than you're a fat flop. It's a really, really massive difference. And once we start to learn that, and we learn that about ourselves, then we can really elevate. We can elevate together, because not a single soul on this planet doesn't have unconditional love pouring through them. Everyone comes from that state. And of course, that's my perspective. Like even the people that you see that you think are the lowest of the low are still unconditionally loved. It's just that they're lost in the darkness. And there's different levels of it. And once you've been lost in the darkness yourself, you really understand it. Like, I passed a lot of my trauma onto my children. I did. I wasn't a healthy person, even in my marriage or with my family and things like that. And to really, I think it's Bob Proctor that says something like, or it might be Earl Nightingale, says like, man's biggest delusion is his own state of consciousness. Right? We believe that it's all this stuff happening to us. Right?
It's not.
And okay, we're born into conditions, and there's a whole thing around it. But once you have that awareness, then you get to choose. And that's exactly what happened to me. So I stopped complaining. And honestly, the people around me were like, Sav, are you okay? They didn't recognize me anymore, because then I could see what I was creating. And all the internal assumptions. And one of the secondary gain things that we all have is it's easier for someone else because, or they don't understand my problems because it's looking for that sympathy. But it's very, very disempowering. Very disempowering, because all your energy is going on that thing, and what you pay attention to, right? Where your focus goes, energy flows, right? So you're recreating more of that same bloody pattern, which you don't want, right? It's really annoying for the self-conscious, because you've got your superconscious, you've got your subconscious, and you've got your self-conscious, right? And your self-conscious is your logical, rational, decision-making mind trying to do everything on its own. I can talk about the stuff I've got so much information and evidence now, but it's really the most important thing that people need to know is that they're loved unconditionally, and that energy is infinite, it's abundant. So all of this lack and limitation and separation and things and confusions that we have comes from a man-made structure. And that's contained in the logical, rational, and decision-making mind. So that's really good news, because now you know that most of your power is in your emotional mind. So all you have to do is decide, commit, and keep going. And that's it. And that's the law of success, right? As someone who has failed a lot before I even knew about this work, right? I can guarantee you that anything you really want, that's a burning desire, heart's desire within you, that you commit to and you just keep taking action towards, no matter how many times you fall off, right? No matter how many times you fall off the horse, as long as you keep taking action towards it, you are guaranteed success. Like, I failed my accountancy exams for 8 years straight. I was so bored. But I had underlying beliefs that I wasn't smart enough. Because of the programming that I picked up really from this child. But as soon as I got pregnant with my daughter, I passed it in the required time. 2 years. I was like, okay. I was like, oh, I'm going to show, right, I'm going to be a model for her. She's actually been a really, I mean, my son was as well, but she has been a really huge reason for my journey. Really huge. Don't think she quite gets it yet, but she has. So, yeah. So, yeah. And like, you know, I failed my driving test 5 times. I've had 3 miscarriages. You know, maybe not in the category of failure, but, you know, it was really painful, you know, and I had 2 of those at work. But then as soon as I made the decision, like literally everything showed up. So my mom showed up, the consultant showed up, and then I had to have the courage to invest, spend the money, go through the process another time. Right, and within 2 months, I was pregnant with my rainbow child.
Yeah.
You know, and then the other thing as well is that you do get evidence along the way. So although you're stepping into the unknown, you get evidence as you step into the unknown, you'll be fine. Yeah. You don't know what it's going to look like, but you know it's going to be good.
Yeah. And I like something we said earlier about following your instincts. And I had quite a similar thing. Always, ever since I can remember, I've always paid attention to the environment. There's always information in the environment when we are sort of connected to it and able to actually read it. To a lot of people, this may be more on the mystical side of things, but everything is connected. Everyone and every single thing is energy connected. So when we make decisions, for example, as earlier we talk about our subconscious mind, just having that reaffirming the new story that we actually want for ourselves. And I know for some coaches and mentors, we speak about daily affirmations. It could be a way for us to reaffirm that new belief. Well, it's like what you and I spoke a couple of days ago about the onion, peeling the onion. What more true is that we are more than just peeling the onion, because we have so many layers, so many different dimensions to it, that, and it's always a learning journey throughout our lives until the end. They're always going to be peeling emotions, always going to be dealing with things from the past and the present, always trying to rewrite that story that it's aligned with our own purpose. And of course, when we get our instincts, it sort of helps us a little bit to move towards that needle.
Yeah, and instinct is slightly different to intuition. And again, like having the ability to critically think and discern different words, because different words mean different things to different people. You literally have to experience it.
Yeah. But it's like creating your own spell, isn't it?
It is definitely, but it's very scientific. Like it's not mystical. Like when you're 0 to 7, your neural pathways are wiring and firing, right? And neurons that wire together, fire together. So if you have, and this is how placebo works, right? And if you have someone who's dressed in a doctor's outfit and they give you a sugar pill, and your mind has accepted, right, that this is a miracle cure drug and there's nothing in it, right? There's nothing in it. And they take this drug, and as long as they believe and keep believing that's the reason for the pill, and then they don't go back and read that it's a sugar pill, right? But as long as they read that, then their body knows how to heal them. And this isn't the first time. I mean, there's so many cases of it now. Like you can look at Joe Dispenza. I witness it with my clients all the time, right? So I had a lady who had really high blood pressure for years, and we cleared the emotion around her losing her mother, and her blood pressure went to normal levels, right? It wasn't the only thing. Like she only had 3 sessions with me. This is when I was first starting. So she healed her relationship with her sister. She hadn't spoken to in 6 months. She her blood pressure came down, and there was something else she had. I think she had some kind of shoulder pain or something, and that went 20 years. But what you've got to understand is that your mind, right, when it hits the ceiling, will try and take you straight back down to the floor. So that's why you need the daily commitment, so you can keep elevating. So it's not that you're going to be consistently suffering and you have to kill yourself and all of those kind of things, right? It's more that you understand that it's a journey and a process, but it is the way forward to. And if you think about it, right, in terms of challenges, they're supposed to be fun, right?
I'm just about to say that.
Like when I'm learning how to do a swivel hip on the trampoline, like it was so funny because you have to land on your bottom the first way, and then you literally are in the air without putting your legs down and land the other side. And because your mind's built for safety, your first instinct is, after you've done it the first time, is put your legs straight down. So I had to talk my mind into understanding the neuroplasticity to keep my legs in the air so I could land on the other side, right? But it was so fun, right? And that was when I was going through my healing with the masculine. My father passed away at that time, but I didn't have a relationship with him. So I was learning to trust fall by just falling on my back on the trampoline and just going back up again. But instead of my muscles being really tense, it was learning how to relax my nervous system, which is, something that most people in this world don't know how to do, because fight, flight, and freeze evolved. So our minds are constantly on, and they're stressed, and they don't know how to receive the information, because you've got something like 76,000 pieces of information, decisions to make every day. There's like 4 billion pieces of information that are being fired at you all the time, which is why you have a filter so you can make sense out of it. But it really is understanding how you work scientifically, emotionally, biologically, with spirit, and that's the connection to the divine. Because if mankind could have figured out, right, how to be happy, healthy, wealthy, and growing by now, and don't get me wrong, we've had a lot of advancement, we would have done it, right? And we would be out into the cosmos doing other stuff, right? What's actually happened is we've had all this advancement, but emotionally not any further forward.
Exactly.
That is changing. Like there are tons of people that are waking up. Like it's really good. Like, and I can see it even in my own environments and things like that. And but it is really about, asking really good questions. So if anyone has a question, and letting them find their own answers, and having truthful discussions and debates, and questioning our own unconscious agendas. I mean, like, I had so many. I probably still do, to be honest. Right? But I can love myself through it as I'm moving through it. And the emotional pain, right, I use tapping to feel it. I feel it, I'm real with it, but it's very, very intentional. So I don't feel it to feel sorry for myself and reaffirm that confirmation. I feel it because I know that I would like to sacrifice it now. Like, I would like to let it go and really live in thrival. And I don't think we actually can imagine how much goodness there is in store for us. So although we're journeying, we are moving to another time, so we can leave this paradigm of pain behind. How long that would take? I've had anywhere between 5 to 200 years, right? Like, I really don't know. But you can enjoy your life right now. You don't have to wait until you make the money and all the rest of it, until you've done all the healing and got into the creative process and all the rest of it. You just keep practicing. You commit, you open your heart, you follow your intuition. You decide, what do I want? What do I want? Do I want people to feel sorry for me? Do I want to keep blaming stuff on the government? Do I want to be worried about all the toxins in my food? Because, like, that's at a whole nother level. Or do I want to be happy? Do I want to be fulfilled? Do I want unconditional love to flow throughout my life? Do I want to have really good connections and a sense of adventure and enjoy myself? Do I want to unleash my creative genius and do what I love? Right? Do I want to make a positive contribution to the world? All of these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. What is it I want to pass to the next generation? My pain or my pleasure? It's funny. And as you can see, right, one of my strengths is talking. love talking. It is, but as a child, I was called a chatterbox, so I never felt confident delivering knowledge or teaching. Although it is kind of funny, because if you're in a session with me, I pretty much just listen to you throughout most of it, unless I'm actually teaching something.
Yeah.
Because when you're in front of someone, and I think this is true for all of us, we never really receive undivided attention and someone who will really validate us and validate our pain and all the stuff that we've been through. Because it's not saying that what you didn't go through wasn't valid. It's all valid. When you try and suppress it or overcome it or do it too quickly or too slowly, whatever, right? Then it just is an unconscious agenda that's still going. Right? You know.
And this is why coaching is very important, right? Because we can try and rationalize everything, even trying to deal with our own emotions. But when you go through the coaching process, you get asked to actually validate the questions itself. You get challenged, and this is when the transformation really begins. Is when you are challenged with the truth, and you are essentially looking for those answers. Because many of us are lost, or along the way we become lost. And it's what I realize with a lot of what's happening in the masses as well. It's the fact that we live in an age right now with so much information and misinformation included there, that nobody really knows what is the next step, what is the truth, what is their purpose in life.
I would reframe that, because
also there is
ourselves, right?
Also there is a lot of people waking up, but there's still a large percentage who have not even realized sort of the matrix that they're in those senses. So for me, coaching have always helped me, because I've always tried to be very logical with things. In even some of my posts are quite logical, and the problem with that, it's like we discussed earlier, when you're too logical, you can't always you're always reaffirming with your prefrontal cortex and not really get it in depth to your subconscious mind where the power really is. So it's knowing that there's that gateway, the RAS, the reticular activating system. This is where we get all the where we can either accept or reject new beliefs. When we understand there is a gateway inside our mind, we can sort of try and play with it. And once we are open-minded, exactly what we said earlier, and be really truthful with ourselves, and this is when we become a little bit more neutral, and we can accept or in fact visualize things more easily as well. Accept there is more things out there that we may not know, and we may want to go down that avenue. What would you say to someone who may be struggling? Because I've seen quite a few people who know what they need to do, but they're emotionally and they're just attached to into their own ways. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so a couple of things you touched on there. So I'm just gonna one, we hold assumptions about each other, which is energy.
Yeah.
So if you always have the assumption that someone needs it, and there's loads of people that hold that assumption because it's based on a past experience, unless they have a much higher state of awareness and they're doing the work, they will always meet your assumption, right? So when we say that the collective are asleep and people don't know, we have to be so mindful of our words and our assumption. That's the first thing, right? The second thing is we accept what it is, right? This is what it is at the moment. And then we move into the but I'm curious to see how it will evolve and change. And then we move into those, that process.
Yeah.
But if you, for example, have a something that you know you have to do and you're procrastinating or you're not doing it, right? The first thing you have to know is that it's just an emotional program. So it's not personal about you. It doesn't mean that you're lazy. It doesn't mean that you're no good. It's literally just a subconscious program. And once you know how to move through it, you can move through it, right? And you're always in command. So for me, like I was procrastinating. Oh my God, what was it? I think it was yesterday. There was something new I was doing, right? And I'm not joking, right? Was when you are, there's two stages when you do something new. When you do something new, you feel really excited and you go all for it and you're all out, right? And then, you still doing it the second day and the third day and by the third week. And then by the fourth week, you're like, you stop, right? Completely. And that's the resistance bringing you back to your floor. But the second part of doing something new is the resistance kicks straight away, right? So you feel like you're going to go wash up. Right, instead of do this thing, or you're going to go have a nap. And this is where you have to have awareness, right? Because sometimes you might need a nap, right? But once you know what it is, then you just keep taking the next step and the next step and the next. It can be the smallest of steps. Like, so when I was learning how to connect with my intuition with my coach, right, it took me 4 hours and 3 bowls of spaghetti to get through that 45-minute session. But I made sure I fucking got through it. Like, I don't care how many times I pause the video, whatever, I'm just going to do it, right? I think there's a book called Eat That Frog, right? I haven't read it. It's supposed to be really good.
From Brian Tracy.
Yeah, and but the other thing is as well, is when you clear the limiting belief and the emotion and all the rest of it around it, right, it makes it much easier. So all of a sudden, you're not trying to do it all with willpower. And it is a combination, right? You do still need willpower. And that's where you consciously become aware of it, right? So I think we call it conscious competence and then unconscious competence, right? No, sorry. It's conscious incompetence, unconscious incompetence, and that's conscious competence and then unconscious competence, right? Or you can look at it at the 4 levels of consciousness, and there's 5
levels of consciousness.
Levels, pretty sure yeah. So it's like, we're trained, actually, we're indoctrinated into life happens to me. And then we start to realize that's happening by me, right, which is our internal programming. Then it starts to happen through me. So you're letting intuition flow through you. And then it happens as me, which is when you're in that proper co-creative state. I don't think there's many people in the world that are at that level. Right? I don't know, right? But you know yourself which state of awareness you're moving to, right? So the first thing that I would say is don't beat yourself up. There's just no point. It doesn't help you.
Doesn't help, no.
And that's actually what happens with a lot of my clients when they come to me. They've never had encouragement, they've never had nurture, they usually have extreme trauma from a young childhood age. They're very high achievers, so they know how to get shit done. They're very fast action takers, but they really want to be free. Like, they just want to be themselves. Right? And they want to shine their light in their way. But they don't. They end up trying to squish themselves into boxes, so they never really release their creative genius because they're trying to fit in. Yeah,
and that's really the problem as well, isn't it? We obviously grow up, we go through the educational system, we start work, and everything's just a structure after structure. But we have to understand that even ourselves, we're more fluent than that as well, right? And exactly what we said earlier about having fun with work. For the first time, actually working with you, that was the first time actually work was actually fun, because when I first began my own company, at first I was really excited about it. Everything was new, everything was exciting. I was being really creative because I am naturally highly creative in a sense of making new reels, new ideas, new photos, new quotes. But then part of the mechanics of the business itself is really painful, because you have to learn about all the back end of the system, and it stopped my creativity altogether. And going through that process for long periods of time, I started losing my own identity per se, and I stopped having fun with work. And this is when I began to struggle, because at the time, especially when you're new and you're not really well known, you have to keep that level of consistency so that you have some awareness for your clients and obviously trying to bring some revenue. And because I was so busy trying to be a perfectionist on the back end, I was not really the guy at the front having fun and engaging. And of course, I did also create some bad karma with that, because I was trying to force it to actually make it work instead of having fun with it and just be myself, being natural with it.
And that is the paradigm shift. Like, so we have moved where so money, it's money and sex are probably the two most inverted programs, and they're actually just neutral energies, right? So once you really understand how they work, it's
just a tool, isn't it?
It's a real process. Like some of my unconscious beliefs were batshit crazy. I mean, I went through a lot of dark nights of the soul, which I'm so grateful that I'm out of, right? But first of all, we always accept full responsibility for everything in our realities. Second is that was a learning process for you. It was a learning process for me as well. I wouldn't have known that gone through it, right? And the third thing is that joy is one of the highest frequency, right? It really is, right? And my natural signature is joy. I walk outside, I'm smiling all day long, right? I've collected 45 numbers in New York just from smiling, right? Do you want my number? No, right? It's really funny, right? And but it is so frowned upon in this world. Like you get called laid back, lazy, all sorts of things. But it actually creates more creativity because you're in a state of flow and play. And actually your immune system loves to feel relaxed and happy and at play. There's two different types of tension, right? So you can have stress that will launch you to another level. That's totally true. Or you can have long-term stress that just keeps shutting you down, shutting your body down. Or you can have euphoria, right? Which is that eustress, which is that excitement for doing something new. Like, and you might still have fear around it. But your experience here, you're supposed to enjoy it. And that's what you get robbed of, right? That's where the illusion comes in. So you do have growth attached to it, but you're not supposed to suffer, right? And so last night, like the first thing I did was I said, right, okay, who's got a joke? And I'm not joking. Like people on the call were like, oh my God, I don't know. My mind's gone blank. I have no jokes, right? And but you are supposed to have deep, deep belly laughter. And this was something I learned off my coach, right? Really deep. You can be a massively deep person, care tons, right? Like, so one of the cause of my purpose is to stop the cycles of trauma and abuse, especially with paedophilia and sex trafficking and children and all of those kind of things, domestic violence, all of those kind of things. My other coach, she's got a foster care charity. She went through the foster care system because 80% of offenders in America actually come from the foster care system because they have no care after they leave the foster homes, right? Which let's not get into that conversation, right? But although we're very, very deep and we care a lot, and we're not perfect, right? We're doing our best. Like everyone is, right? But we're hilarious. Like there is deep belly laughter, joy inside her container because I'm coached with her other coaches, right? When we get together, there's a real sense of laughter. With my clients, it's exactly the same. It doesn't even matter who you are, because I worked with you, then I worked with another guy who was like, I just like I don't think he really ever smiles, right? But even in that container, like his core joy starts to come through. Because that's who you are, right? At the core and joy looks different for different people. So for me, it's smiling and laughing. For someone like Ron, right, probably isn't the same as what I do, right? But you can feel that. You can feel that in his energy. You can feel that in his presence. And so the paradigm shift is, instead of working for money, instead of working for love, instead of working, for your health, it's the other way around, right? You're healthy and you love yourself, right? Even more. And the reason, like the biggest sign that we live in on a kind of indoctrinated slave planet that we're here to break the chains of now is when someone says to you, especially kids, right, when they say, or someone says, what do you want to do? And so the kid says, I want to be an artist, or I want to do something I love, right? And the next question is it lucrative? Is it going to make you any money?
Yeah.
Right? That's how we live in slave systems tied to money. But it isn't that way, right? It's a neutral energy. It's actually the opposite. Once you start to really live in your creative genius, then because you are love, because you are abundance, because you are health, you can see it reflected back in your external reality.
Yeah.
And you're always going to have that commitment because, let's face it, you've experienced the other side. And if that was working, you wouldn't be trying to find a way out of it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And exactly like that. I mean, I went through my own conditioning as well. But of course, we all still are. But for me, it was the painful situations. I wanted to be in those painful situations because I realized at the time I was actually really good at turning a negative event into a positive. So of course, when I came to certain challenges in my own business and personal development, I put myself through pain because in the hope that I was going to turn that into something positive. And of course it didn't. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes just created more pain, unnecessary pain, because to me it was more of a challenge. But yeah, I mean, I've had great opportunities to work with great people, and some of those opportunities end up being lost because of my own conditioning and the fact that I didn't used to believe myself. I didn't used to believe I was good enough for the actual subjects I was teaching at the time. So it was all those internal conversations that I was still having that were not really helpful at all. But the mind is, like we said, is always trying to reason with our own thinking, but it's not always right. It's not always right. So having mentoring advice sort of helps break the cycle.
Awareness is huge. And when we work together, when I work with my clients, I don't know how much I'm allowed to share here, you'll notice that a lot of that is emotional. It's even logical. I mean, logic is important, right? We don't want to throw logic away. It's very, very important. But a lot of the internal programming, or like how you said, you get into problems of pain to move through to, fixing problems. That usually happens when you have a lot of trauma as a child, because you become the nurturer. You become the one that fixes everything. You become the one everyone goes through, right? You become the adult. You do. Never have. But it's really unhelpful, and it creates a lot of negative karma as well. Because someone else goes around you, right? And then you're in that constant cycle, and like on the one hand it motivates you, right? It's like that tenacity and pulls you forward. But your energy is you reap what you sow. Right? So
although I had energy, I was not having the results.
But you're having the same results, right?
Results.
So even if it looks slightly different, the feeling is the same, right? So if it's not coming from unconditional love, it's coming from resentment, fear, disappointment, frustration, and guess what? Even if you get the fix, right, and you solve the problem, still in the same energy.
Yeah.
Right? And you might feel good for like 2 minutes, but you're still in the same energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say open your heart, because most people don't know. They don't even know their hearts are closed, right? When I started, I had like an emotion code reading, and she came back and she was like, yeah, you've got a 10-kilometer stone wall around your heart, right? And this is so important because your mind communicates through feelings, signs, and symbols before language.
Yeah.
Language is like 7%. I don't even know what it is, right?
Yeah.
You can tell when someone is angry with you. You can walk into a room, or you can have someone walk into a room and the energy will drop.
Yeah.
Right? And that's also the collective energy because of people's assumptions from past, right? Or you can have someone walk into the room and automatically the energy lifts. Right? And the life and soul of the party, those kind of people, right? Because everything starts with your energetics. Everything does. Like this Wi-Fi call is energetics. If you look at quantum physics, quantum mechanics, I think they said that. I think they say it was 99.9% of an atom, right, was nothing with space. Now they look at it and they're just like, oh, it's just foam. That is actually 100%. And we can get into the multi-dimensional time, but like the fact that time doesn't exist and all the rest of it, but that might be a bit much for the school, right? But it is very scientific. It's very scientific. Spirit and the science come together. In fact, I watched a doctor the other day of someone, I don't know what his title was, but it was really good. And he was talking about the Bible, and he said, God gave you science when he said, all the animals, he gave you science. And then when you lost your way, he came back in, right? He came back in to be resurrected, to bring him all back to his heart. That's like the biggest act. But the problem is that through religion, through dogma, through evangelism, through reincarnation, through all of this stuff, the message has been lost. And it's always been here. It's ancient. Is you are a creator, you are loved unconditionally, you are more than you can ever imagine right now, right? And you're supposed to have had challenges and adventure and journey, and you're stronger than anything that's in this world. And you're an eternal being anyway. So that once you come into that awareness, then you get to choose. You don't have to stay in suffering. Like you've done that, you've completed that level. Well done. You passed that exam. You didn't have to do like I did and stay 8 years trying to pass your accountancy exams. You get to thrive, expand, evolve, thrive, expand, evolve. And actually it's the nature of the universe to expand. So if you're not expanding, you're not a true reflection of who you actually are. Does that make sense? The small mind is always looking for certainty. It's always looking for familiarity, but it's not comfortable. And it's not joyful, right? It doesn't build connection, it builds separation. And it isn't in harmony. In fact, it just causes conflict. So that's internally, that's with other people, that's with countries, it doesn't, and it's not what we want anymore. We're evolving through that stage, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. So thank you for sharing that with everyone as well. It's always been a pleasure to listen to you because we can go really deep. Of course, we try and keep things simple for the call, for the video podcast. But it's been a great pleasure to have you here, Sav. And if the listeners and the watchers, if they like to actually get in contact with you, how can they actually do that?
So when you post it, hopefully you'll have a space so I can put my Linktree login, and then you can just reach out to me on Messenger. So either on Instagram or Facebook, or hopefully on my email address, you can reach out to me there. And I do a lot of one work because I really enjoy it. But I am creating some more group programs now because I really love that as well. Like that's the only reason. I just really love it. And also like the energy in groups is so much more powerful because we influence each other all the time environmentally. And that's really awesome, you know, when it's moving in the right direction.
It's the power of the masterminds as well, isn't it? It's a bit like a mastermind. When we come together, we evolve so much faster if we were actually to do it alone. So
yeah, because we're not with islands, right? We've never been alone. That always makes me laugh. When I go to the bathroom, it's like, you're not alone.
Yes, we may feel alone sometimes, but we're not alone. There is always somebody who has gone through the same thing as we did, or worse, and they still actually were able to make something out of themselves and move through the pain and get to the other side. You know, we don't have to wait until we actually passed away in order to actually, you know, relieve the pain. We can do it right now. As soon as we decide to change, is having that option. We all have the control.
It really is, right? Resting in peace is when you die. Resting in peace is literally your nervous system resting and allowing the solutions to come through. That's what it is. And enjoying your life, right? Like the growing and the falling. Like, you know, when a kid learns to walk, they don't just get up and start walking. They fall over.
They fall over many times, yeah.
Stop. You know, they're not in their minds going, oh shit, my cousin learned to walk at 3 months earlier than me. It's never going to happen, right? They just go. And that's literally who we are.
Yeah.
Until the conditioning sets in.
That's it. Well, if you had one last thing to say to anybody right now, what would you say? Like as the last little tip or last little message?
So my last message would be, in all the ways that you've been conditioned to feel like you're a burden, that there's not enough resources for the earth, right? There's not enough resources for you. There's not enough resources inside of you. What are your biggest questions around that? Or do you straight up agree with it? Because those are the questions, right? And once you start to ask those questions, those answers will be revealed to you. And the best way for you to discover is to go and seek the answer for yourself.
Oh, let's end with that. Well, thank you so much for coming up to our show. And it's been a pleasure, obviously, knowing you for a little while now. And I can't wait to see where you go from now. And I'm still watching all the reviews there and the testimonials you've been getting from people from all around the world. And this was one of the purpose why we actually got you here in the first place, was because of all the changes, all the positive changes you are making as a leader in your own field, impacting so many lives. So thank you so much for coming, and we cannot wait to hear what is going to happen next.
Thank you. I can't even.